In the summer of 1830, France had a king for about 20 minutes. We know, because a duchess in the next room was listening through the wall, and what she heard was an argument. Welcome to Ranked History, where we rank the past so you don't have to repeat it. Today, the 5 shortest reigns in history. The rules. 1. They officially held the top job. 2. The clock runs from gaining it to losing it. 3. Every entry is shorter than the last. By number 1, we are down to minutes. Number 5. Lady Jane Grey, Queen of England for 9 days. Or 13. Even the length of her reign is up for debate, which tells you how it went. Jane was 16, brilliant, and more interested in books than thrones. She got one anyway. When the boy King Edward VI died in July 1553, his will skipped both his sisters and landed the crown on his cousin Jane, steered by the Duke of Northumberland, who had conveniently just married his son to her. Jane was told she was queen and reportedly fell to the floor. Historians count her reign from Edward's death, or from her public proclamation 4 days later. 9 days by one count, 13 by the other. Either way, it ended the same. Mary Tudor raised an army. The council changed its mind, and the same men who had proclaimed Queen Jane proclaimed Queen Mary instead. Jane was convicted of treason. 7 months later, at 17, she was beheaded at the Tower. The men who put her on the throne mostly kept their heads. The girl who never asked for it didn't. Number 4. John I of France, king for 4 days, and the only king of France who was never anything else. John was born a king. His father, Louis X, had died 5 months earlier. So in November 1316, the crown of France sat waiting at a cradle. The kingdom held its breath over one newborn. 4 days later, it exhaled. The infant king was dead, and his uncle Philip, the regent and next in line, was crowned soon after. Contemporaries noticed the order of events. Rumors said poison. One version blamed a pin. Nothing was ever proven, and infant mortality in 1316 needed no assassins. But France wondered. Then, 40 years later, it got stranger. An Italian merchant named Giannino was handed documents proving he came to believe that he was John I. Swapped in the cradle, raised in Siena, rightful king of France. The documents were almost certainly forged. He spent the rest of his life pursuing the throne anyway, and died in a jail in Naples. The 4-day king was buried at Saint Denis. His story refused to fit in the coffin. Number 3. Khalid bin Barghash, Sultan of Zanzibar. 2 days on the throne ended by the shortest war ever fought. On the 25th of August, 1896, the old sultan died suddenly. Poison, said the palace rumor mill, and the rumor pointed at Khalid. Proven? No. Convenient? Extremely. Within hours, Khalid had moved into the palace with nearly 3,000 armed men. One problem. Britain considered Zanzibar its business, and Britain had not been consulted. The Royal Navy parked warships in the harbor and delivered an ultimatum. Be out of the palace by 9 in the morning. At 9, Khalid was still there. Minutes later, the shelling started. It stopped roughly 40 minutes after that, 38 by the most popular count, when the white flag went up over what was left of the palace. Some 500 defenders were dead or wounded by the usual figures. British casualties, 1 sailor, injured. Khalid ran to the German consulate, and from there into exile. The war that ended his reign fits inside a lunch break. The reign itself barely outlasted the weekend. Number 2. Michael Romanov, Tsar of Russia for 1 day, unless he never was, which is genuinely an open question. March 1917. Petrograd is in revolt, and Tsar Nicholas II abdicates for himself and, in a move of doubtful legality, for his young son too. The crown lands on his brother Michael, who wakes to find himself, possibly, the ruler of a country currently on fire. Michael took advice. Most of it amounted to one sentence: the streets cannot be held. So the next day, in a borrowed apartment on Millionena Street, two lawyers drafted a manifesto in which Michael declined the throne, unless an elected assembly called him back. It never did. Nicholas read his brother's manifesto and summed it up in one word: rubbish. 300 years of Romanov rule ended on that sheet of paper. So was Michael the last czar? He never accepted, never reigned, never wore the crown. Some historians count him. The Romanovs themselves couldn't agree. The final ruler of the Russian Empire is a matter of opinion, which is a strangely fitting way for that empire to end. Number 1. Louis XIX of France. Reign length, about 20 minutes, possibly 0. Paris, August 1830. Revolution, again. Charles X, losing his capital and his nerve, sits down to abdicate in favor of his 9-year-old grandson. But between the old king and the boy stands one signature: his son, Louis Antoine, heir to the throne. The moment Charles signed, by the strict logic of monarchy, Louis Antoine was king. He spent what came next in an argument. His wife pressed him not to give up the crown her family had already lost once to a revolution. His father sat by, defeated. In the next room, the Duchess de Maillet heard it through the wall. In her words, a strong altercation between the father and the son. Then Louis Antoine picked up the pen and countersigned. About 20 minutes, timed mostly by the argument. The crown sailed past the grandson, too, and landed on a cousin. It might be the shortest reign in history, or it might be no reign at all. The abdication he signed never once calls him king. It says, simply, Louis Antoine. 20 minutes on the throne of France. He spent every one of them being told what to do. The 5 shortest reigns: 9 days for Jane, or 13, 4 for the infant John, 2 for Khalid, whose war was shorter than his reign, 1 day for Michael, maybe, and 20 minutes for Louis Antoine, if they count at all. The strange pattern. The shorter the reign, the harder historians argue about whether it even happened. Crowns come and go. Paperwork is forever. Tell me in the comments which short reign I missed. Next time, history's most doomed expeditions. Subscribe. It takes less time than the reign of Louis XIX.